Alright, here we go. This is a 1991 Oldsmobile. So no one will probably even care about this, but I hate this car. So I might as well post a little bit about it. Maybe it'll leave. So it's a Cutlass Calais. And it has the Quad 4 2.3 liter dual overhead cam. Now like a long story short, this car was bought by somebody and it was mixing coolant and antifreeze, and I was going to do the head gasket. It's because we couldn't find an engine and he was already buried in it, and it turned out that the water pump, which is driven off of the timing chain, it's, I don't know, you won't be able to see it I don't think under the exhaust manifold. Either way, behind the timing chain, I was in the process of doing the cylinder head and I saw the coolant leaking, so I wasn't real confident this thing would even have oil pressure or run, but whatever. So I did it because the customer wanted me to, and it's made it to Georgia and back, and now it's misfiring. Now these things don't have any wires, they just have the whatever that thing is underneath here, the module and two coils and the distribution part. So the customer was seeing, I guess it was flashing under here. It wouldn't start for him, and when it did, it was running like on one cylinder, sounded like a well pump, and they just saw it glowing underneath here. Now he bought his own stuff because I said just go get it. I really, like I said, what I did to it, I wasn't sure that it didn't melt a valve or something, but so I did the tune-up pretty much, which involves changing the spark plugs, which are down in the center there, and then changing this unit here, and underneath here are two coils. There's the module here. So I don't have really any way of checking for a spark out of these other than just turning it this way and using a jumper wire to ground and checking. So the original one, which is this one, when I had it laying like that, I saw it arcing back in here. So I knew it was bad. And under the same token, if you look at the spark plugs, when I pulled them out, you can see I have two that look like, you know, dark, but they were firing, and then I have two, and I dropped the other one, that looked like that, which were black and definitely were not firing. So, you know, either that module short knot to ground in between, because there's companion cylinders number 1 and 4 and 2 and 3, so these center two weren't firing right. Could be the module, could be the coils. Either way, I put the new one in, put it down in the hole, and it's still misfiring, but it's running on maybe 3 cylinders, maybe 2.5. So I did the same thing. I laid it down this way, and I was checking for spark out of all of them. I just took the little rubber boots off, and you're left with the little electrode. And you could see that jump to a jumper wire just going to ground somewhere. And I don't need to really show you that. I just was kind of telling you what I did. So at this point, you know, because of the history of the engine, thinking, you know, I could have had a valve get swallowed, or a no compression, or, you know, something like that. So I'm starting to get a little bit nervous on that end, just because of all the work we did to it, and it's only been, you know, not even a month, a couple thousand miles. So I started chasing to see which cylinder was misfiring, and since I can't do it with this really, and it's a 91, so there's nothing I can see on a monitor, I started to try to unplug the injectors, which are down there. There's one, there's another one, there's one under there. So, and then the fourth one, of course, is buried underneath this crankcase vent thing. So So like I said, I was trying to figure out which cylinder was misfiring, and without being able to, you know, disconnect the plug wire or one coil, I had to kind of go for the injectors and see which one made a difference. And it wasn't as clean as I thought it would be. I don't know if you'll be able to hear it. Alright, I have it running, and there goes my drink off of the whatever, but I have it running, and I'm sure you can hear it misfiring. Not take my word for it. But if I disconnect, sorry about that, if I disconnect the center two, it would almost stall. They're kind of hard to get to. I disconnected number 3 and it stalled out. So it's definitely running on number 3, probably 2 and 3, because same thing happened on number 2. It wasn't quite as bad. I think it might have stayed running, but you get the gist. It's the same thing. But I went to 1 and 4, and that's where I'm finding my issue, which is totally opposite of the spark plugs I saw. So start it back up. So it's misfiring real bad. And I actually took the clips out of the number 1 and 4. And if I disconnect number 1, nothing really happened. It was kind of the same. Now I also took all the bolts out of this thing so I can get this out of my way so we could see. And if I take off number 4, it is running on number 4. But with number 1 plugged in, I can plug it in. It actually gets worse with number 1 plugged in. And then if I disconnect number 4, then it seems to not make a difference. So at that point, it doesn't make much sense. Then I started looking at the wiring diagram, and I'll show you that. So here we go. Here's the wiring diagram. So it's a 91, so there is no color. But if you look at the injector circuit, which is here, you could see that they all share a power on that gray wire, and then they show 2 of them at light green, 2 and 3, and then 1 and 4 at your light blue, going back to 1 driver for 2. So it's actually firing 2 for the price of 1. So that's why I think I'm having that weird issue between 1 and 4, where it kind of seems to be different as far as which cylinder is making the change or not. So the next step was to, you know, for me, I mean, I like graphing things, so I graphed it first, and I'll show you what I saw. So I'm just using the old Vantage because that's the one that was nearest me, and I'm looking at a double hump here for on the voltage side, and I think it does even tell you that it's a peak and hold side. So if we went to just operation, it would tell you how it works and then how to hook it up, and it says quad 4 injectors use peak and hold drivers and are pulsed in pairs. So there's the answer to the question of the wiring diagram. So if I just go back to my tests and I go to just a signature test to see what we're looking at, go scroll through to my waveform viewer, we'll start this up. Alright, I have it running, and if I go to one of my good ones that I know is working, we'll just go to number 3. You can see that's pretty much the signal they're looking for. So the first pulse is opening the injector. The second one is, I guess, holding it open for whatever, you know, it's kind of current limiting it as well. So this dial, you really don't want to ground fully because the resistance is real low in them anyway. It's like, I don't know, a couple ohms. So if that's going to lead into the next test. Now if I go to number 1, it wasn't doing anything, and I look, you see a whole lot of, if I can get to the right wire. And then if I disconnect number 4, you can just see I got a bunch of hash running through there, but no real good injector control. Now if I put it on to number 4, it even got funky with me touching it. And then I disconnect number 1. Now that MISFIRE changed, and you can see I actually have kind of the control that I was seeing on the other one. So you compare that one, and then I'll go to number 3, and you can see there's the same signal. So now I'm pretty sure I have a problem in number 1. Let's show you a resistance reading here real quick. So if I go back to my tests, and I go back to the resistance check, it tells me to unplug the harness connector, which is in the front of the engine, because the ones on the rail are harder to get to, and since there's a connector, so it says unplug it, and then, you know, check, you know, for connector. You can see which ones do what, and they want to see 1 to 2 ohms. And then if you don't see that, then they want you to do each one individually, and then you got to take the oil separator, you know, which I took off, and then each injector should have 2 to 3 ohms. Now there's where the whole Ohm's law thing comes in, because you're looking at 2 injectors, looking at them in parallel, 1 to 2 ohms, and then individually they should be 2 to 3 ohms. So whenever I unplug the connector, I'll show you where that is. So I kind of moved it out of the way a little bit, but there's the connector so we can see it. So if I unplug this connector here, with one hand is too hard to do, I think. So, okay, so here is the connector, 3 wires. So you have your it's kind of oily, but you have your tan one, or gray one is your hot wire, and then you have your light blue and your light green. So I'm going to be going between the one on the right and either one of these, and that's going to be my resistance check. So if I go back to my resistance here, so I'm open loop. Now if I just take my red one, and I'll go to the positive, and then I'll go to the ones that were working, and you can see I have 1 ohm. So it said 1 to 2, and those 2 are firing. Now if I go to the blue one, I got that backwards. Oh, that's right. I have that injector unplugged. That gives me the 1. So if I go to the blue one, that was number 1 disconnected. I have 0.6 of an ohm. So that isn't where they want it. So then, you know, when they said if you see that, then they want me to check them individually. So since I have them, I have everything disconnected. If I unplug number 4 and just give me number 1 injector, I have 0.9 of an ohm, 1 ohm, and they want 2 to 3. So that one is shorted internally. It has to be. So I'm going to current ramp it just because I want to see a shorted injector signal. But if I plug in number 4 and then I unplug number 1, then I have 2.2 ohms. So that's 2 to 3. That's in line with the resistance check for number 4. So I have a problem with number 1, and that brings to my mind the question of the whole Ohm's law thing. And I'm sure there's people that have you know, stuff to say and formulas, and I could find it and be all smart like, but I'm just going to show you. So if we take, I have a package of resistors. They're 100 ohm resistors. So if I take 2 of these, I think I had these to bypass a GM pass lock or something like that. So if I just check, just because I can, if I check the resistance between this 100, oops, so I take this 100 amp or 100 ohm resistor, and you see I have, I don't know why that went to that scale. Let's get off of this real quick. I'll just go to my multimeter, go up to a 500 ohm scale. You can see I have 98 ohms. So if I take the second one, just to prove it, same thing, 100 ohm, I have 101, 98. Okay, so I have 2 100 ohm resistors, and if I put them in parallel, just twist the 2 leads together, so I have 100 ohms on each leg, but the resistance drops. And this is just proof of Ohm's law. It's not really giving you the mathematical equation, but now I only have 50 ohms, so it cuts it in half on 2 at least equal resistors. Because if you want to go, like I have one here that's, this one here I think is like 30 ohms or something like that. So I have one, this is 10 ohms, so I have one 10 ohm, and then I take like a ballast style resistor. This is 50 ohms, and if I take and put this one in parallel, which is going to be harder to do here, put this in parallel, I have 7, well see I'm on a bigger scale, so if I go down to a 10 ohm scale, I have 8.4 ohms. So that cut the lowest resistance, even, you know, even the resistance is lower than the lowest one that's individual. So there you go. You guys have fun with that Ohm's law thing and send me the formulas and tell me why this one at 60 total ohms turns out to be 8.4 and the 200s are 50. But either way, that's why whenever I'm checking at my connector, it says 1 to 2 ohms, and then individually it says 2 to 3. So there's a proof of an Ohm's law, and you know, all you teachers out there, scanner danner, post something, whatever. So now I'm going to go to my current ramp just to see it. So here we go. I'm hooking up down at the connector because it's hard to get anything to these injectors. So I'm doing 2 cylinders at a time. Well, actually it's firing 1 time anyway. So there's the light blue one. Is that the blue or the green? That's the light green one. So here's my good 2 cylinders firing, and like I said, it was a peak and hold style, so you're going to see an initial rise, and then the second peak is going to hold it open. If I don't know how to change my scale here. Alright, changing the scale a little bit so we can see what's going on here. You can see I have the initial ramp up, and then on the second pulse it's just holding it open for whatever the duration is going to be, and then it drops off. So that's the good 2. Now if I go to the bad one, go to my light blue wire here. So I'm hooked up to the bad one. Actually both injectors are plugged in, and you can see instead of having a nice ramp, it's shooting straight up, still holding it open, but there is a sharp ramp up to, you know, to the peak. So that's definitely a sign of a short. So if I disconnect number 1, now you can see my resistance is actually higher in the circuit because I, you know, unplugged one, and now I'm, instead of an overall resistance of the 1 or 1.2, I do have the 2 or 2.2. So that's probably what's affecting my hold time. But you can see number 4 showing me a decent ramp. So number 4 is not shorted. If I plug in number 1, you can see it goes straight up and down again. If I unplug number 4, doesn't make a difference. So all my current's flowing through the shorted injector. It's not even making it, even whenever I unplug number 4 at this point, it's not doing anything because I have a direct short. So there's my problem. I'm going to put the new one in. Should purr like a 91 quad 4. Old one, new one. Believe it or not, AutoZone was able to get it same day. All I did was take the 2 through bolts and the 1 bolt holding the lines down and lifted the rail up. And I'm gonna be honest with you, I had a heck of a time getting this thing out when I did the cylinder, or the intake and the cylinder head and all that stuff on the first time around. So I actually left it on the head when I pulled it up because I couldn't get the bolt loose, and I had to use a pair of locking channel locks to even get that one little bolt out, one that's still stuck right there. So it was easier this time. You know, hopefully none of you ever have to do this. So just a heads up on that. Well, there it is. Purring and knocking like a good old quad 4. But it's not misfiring. If I hook up to my number 1 and 4 wire again. look at my, they're both hooked up, it's running, so warmed up now. I don't know, the on time on the hold part is not quite as long, but I'm not really going to go any further. See, there's one good injector and one probably semi-good injector. So there it is. Appreciate you watching. Thanks.